Doing all right. We're at 1 hour, halfway through. So let's go with the first part where what would you want from a mentor? Because I remember at some point you reached out to me, and I can't remember, was it that time in that 3 month lull, or I can't remember exactly when you first reached out to me, which is me being a bad mentor. So uh, yeah, when was the first time you reached out to me?
I still got it actually pictured in my head. I think I was sitting out in the courtyard. It was with another mate. We're having lunch discussing the research paper for the last unit for the physio degree. And I think we were just walking past, and I remembered someone saying you were interested in esports, and I struck up a conversation there because I also
This
play
was out.
games. I
This
was
was
interested in.
outside the Cumberland Library, was it?
Yeah,
And
that's
you're
it.
probably sitting the closest table to the depot.
Yep.
Okay, I remember some of it. Okay, because I was thinking another context where you emailed me or asked we want to have like a longer chat. But yeah, if we technically that was the first time I guess we were talking more than just the look. This is how you hold the head when you do a pivot. So, type of conversation as an educator. Cool. So okay, yep. Esports brings us together. That's amazing. So when was that though? Do you remember?
Ooh, probably early 2020, I think.
Okay.
Very early 2020.
Yeah. Yeah. I think around that time was when I was starting to finish my PhD and thinking about what was next
Mm.
myself and realizing, well, two things. Uh, One is that the topic I was doing before, which is sleep and back pain, it was interesting, but I wasn't as passionate about it anymore. And I think that's quite normal when people do their PhDs. They kind of spend 3 years on it, and sometimes it sticks, sometimes it doesn't. And at the same time, I went through the PhD still gaming, and I'm like thinking, like I wish I could do something with it. Um, Anyway, that's more me, and that's probably Q&A time for later on. So yeah, so you knew something along the lines that maybe I was a cooler lecturer, hopefully, because I played video games. I'm not sure if that was your impression or whatnot, but that was how you kind of remembered me, I guess. And then at what point did you reach out to me, or did I reach out to you? I can't remember exactly because I think your sister also studies the degree, so I can't remember if that was the
Yeah,
mediating link.
I I think you were teaching my sister in one of the MS classes, and then she told me that you were also interested in like the esports scene, and
Mm.
I went from there, just sent the email,
Yeah,
and rest is history. Yeah.
yeah. Remember how long ago that was? I mean, we can look it up. I can open my email now and Google, search up your name, and we can see when was your first email. And hopefully there was no random email saying, "Kevin, why did you mark me so harshly on this exam?"
That'd be about right, wouldn't it?
No, no. Well, I think we set our first Zoom meeting. Um, where was it? Uh, it says the 2nd of February of
Hmm.
this year. Was it this year then, or was it
I think it was last year. I
last
think there
year?
might have been two. Was either one? There's definitely one this year. I think there may have been one last year.
Hmm. I was just still trying to find your. Well, anyway, some time ago. Um, yeah. Do, do, do. Yeah. You definitely you definitely approached me in late January, like the 29th of January, going, and I read your email. It says, "Hi, Kevin. I was interested in meeting up and having a chat with you about your area of research and experience when going through a PhD. If so, when would you be free to chat?" It's a very nicely written email, by the way. And I kind of told you how about tomorrow. Yeah, I'm like that. I'm like, oh, I'm free tomorrow. Let's do it. Um, so cool, cool. So that's how we started. And then we can talk about that. Actually, no, we're still on this topic. I'm doing a really bad hosting of this interview at the moment. So yeah, so what I'm guessing we've still been talking all this time, in this interview, and also just throughout the year, and in some sense, I've been doing some sort of mentorship role. But if you wanted to speak more generally, why did you continue to speak to me? Like, what were you looking for in a mentor? In other words, if you were a listener right now,
Mhm.
what should they be looking for in someone to kind of mentor them and talk about life, career, games, whatever?
I would say try to find someone that has walked a path that you would like to walk and has had a lot of experiences in a field that you're interested in. That's very important in finding within a mentor, as well as someone that's very approachable, inspiring, and passionate in what they do. So I'm a firm believer that positive energy is very contagious, and if you can find someone like that, then that's fantastic. And lastly, someone that you can also bounce ideas off. So working out what's like what ideas are good, what ideas may need more work, and then just try to kind of test that because the mentor's gone through those experiences, so they can likely give you a bit of a not a shortcut, but it can get you another level of insight that you would not be able to get otherwise, like because of the sheer exposure of experiences they've had.
That's great. See, one thing that maybe isn't said enough is that often as being a mentor, you actually learn so much from your mentee as well. So I 100% agree with what you said. This is not scripted, by the way. He's come up with this himself. So yeah, no, I have my own mentors. Some in academic circles because of the research pathway I've gone. Some in the clinical circles because I'll still do that too. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Seaton, with yeah, what makes a good mentor. And they could be characteristically really good, but as you said, they kind of would be better if they walk the path that you're intending to walk. In other words, stay in the field that you like to do, or etc. So cool. I'm obviously none of those things, but yeah. And is there more to add, by the way, on that topic, on mentorship and stuff?
Other areas of mentorship. I'm just trying to think. I'd say the pathway is probably the most important part. That and like the approachability. Like if the pathway is very, very like similar, there's probably a greater learning experience there. That's not to say there won't be if the pathway is not similar, because there's probably similar interests there as well. But from my personal opinion, at least, if the pathway is very similar, that's ideal in my mind, at least.
Okay, I'm gonna put you on the spot now. So what do you know about my pathway that makes you go, oh, I like to talk to this guy called Kevin?
I'd say you're very interested in like the literature before, like let's say the PhD element of it. I thought also PhD is very interesting in terms of like you're on the front lines of like what's out there. So no longer are you kind of just reading someone else's ideas that they've tested and whatnot. You have your own unique ideas, see where they fit in the larger world, and kind of test them against other people's research. Find that gap, find that meaning that otherwise may not have ever occurred. So your own contribution to something that's really quite powerful, and you kind of leave your own mark on in the literature aspect. So I have great respect for everyone that does that, and I found that quite impressive. So I value academia quite a lot. So that was probably one of the large reasons.
Yeah, and I have my own opinions on academia and everything like that. But yeah, the definite thing about doing a research degree or PhD definitely gives you those good skills that you can apply back clinically as well, in terms of when you have done the research yourself, as in like the actual study, you know how to do the actual study, then you realize the intricacies behind what can be reported. Is it truly a sample that is reflective of the population that you're aiming to treat, etc., and all that stuff. So yeah, and of course it just challenges you in so many ways because you hear so many different opinions across the world internationally. So it really does, you're right, it builds the critical thinking skill. So yeah, okay, so that's good. So so that's good to know that you kind of wanted to talk to me partly because of the academic stuff, and yeah, probably a few other things, I hope. But let's go to the probably the final question for now before we see if any viewers have questions. Now you're kind of going from your degree now into the real world, and I think a lot of people these days, I mean, when I ask the question, where do you want to work? A lot of them just goes, whoever wants to take me. But the reason why I've always been so happy to mentor you, because that wasn't the answer you kind of gave. I mean, you said at one point as cheekily, but you obviously have a goal as well. But not just the area, when you can talk about which area you want to go in, but the job itself, like, you know, you can be more detailed in the characteristics of the job. So that's the question. So where would you, if you had the ideal dream job, or at least an ideal first job, what are you looking for?
So mainly when I think of it, at least, more exposure to different schools of thought or like systems that physios use when treating patients. I feel like a lot of clinics have their own little systems that they use to approach problems and problem solve. Like the whole idea of the toolboxes, everyone's got their own unique set, and just seeing how they use it and apply it, I find that very interesting, and kind of how that influences the treatment. And furthermore, like their clinical reasoning of why they're treating specific structures. All their justifications are generally fairly varied. And another thing I probably want from first job is just more experience with teamwork and understanding that the patient's recovery journey is going to be involved with a lot of different people within that sphere. So your GPs, your surgeons, other physios, EPs, case managers, their families, stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say those are probably the main parts.
Yeah, so in other words, it sounds like the place, or probably more importantly, the people you're going to be working with, one is able to explain why they do the things they do.
Yeah.
Which is the clinical reasoning side, the very least from a clinical perspective, and hopefully can do the same in other parts of the job, being the administration side or business side, perhaps, if it's the private practice. And then you got the other side where it looks like you're looking for something that's a bit more multidisciplinary. I'm guessing maybe this is because of your experience as a teenager, as you shared earlier, which when you were 14, 15. So yeah, some practices, they aren't, like, you rarely get much more going between a surgeon and a physio, or a GP and a physio. Some practices will be, they will have exercise physiologists, they will have OTs to talk to, plus the others we just mentioned, plus perhaps some psychologist connections. So it sounds like you want to suss out a place that kind of is more, has more of that happening than not, because this is what you're interested in. So good. So let's see, the first thing is that, one, you know what you're looking for, which is good. And then now the next step would be, sussing out jobs that do have that, when there are quite a number of jobs being advertised. So you have the luxury of choice should you get multiple offers. So Good. Anything else you'd be looking for in, like, your first job? You mentioned those two things.
I'll just say the exposure and the experience, because I see that as like the biggest investment in yourself as a physiotherapist. If you can kind of nail as much skill sets down, that will bring value to the patients, and more patients will want to see you. So that's how I see it, at least. Like nailing those skills, nailing, like, let's say, what needs to be done, what's the best treatment that you can provide, how can you do that? That should be, I guess, at the forefront of your mind of becoming a great physio. That's how I see it.
Yep, you're right. Yeah, so the trap is sometimes you get too specialized too quick, and you lose some of the broader skills that might happen. So for example, let's just say you go straight into the nitty-gritty of a very niche area, and then sometimes people in this niche area might have something quite simple that was in another specialty, or I shouldn't say call them specialties, but in just another more broader sense or field. And then just because you haven't explored that as much in your junior years, then that's where you're struggling, because you don't have as much exposure. So that's why I often tell people, like, sure, you want to have a niche in being a bouldering physio, or esports physio, a dance physio, a musician physio. I would usually tell them, and I would be saying to you as well, is that in your first year, it's probably better to just get a rounded experience. That way you get to know what your bread and butter is, and then go in. And that has two reasons. One is the reason you already said. It just makes you better as a clinician. The other thing, it gives you kind of a bit of a fallback. What if my job pathway esports flops? Esport doesn't exist in 2 more years. Where am I going to go next if I have only seen esports players my whole time? So yeah, so it's also like a kind of a fallback, as well as having a range of experiences where you can switch back to other things if things don't go the right way or the way that you were hoping to. So, all right. So that's kind of the characteristics of the first job. Just this is more you now. So where do you want to go? We mentioned cardiopulmonary, neuro, musculoskeletal, and I think that's the conversation most people have. Like, physiotherapy only has 3 main fields and they don't overlap, which is one, incorrect. They do overlap, and secondly, also incorrect because there's tons more than just those 3, but that's just how the courses are named for simplicity. But where are you going? Like, what are the options that you have tossed up in your mind? It's obviously peds, right?
Peds, yeah. I'd say probably something more to deal with like Musk, probably. But I mean, at this stage, I'm still pretty like, my mind hasn't like, let's say, targeted on like, I absolutely want to smash out this field. It's kind of very out in the open, I suppose, like open to all kinds of different experiences to really see what's out there, I think, because I can't really gauge what I like if I don't know what's there to begin with. Like, it's just very different from looking at in uni or looking at a book, learning about all this stuff, and then seeing how it actually presents. There's usually, it doesn't fall like a 1-to-1. There's usually a bit of difference there. I would say for quite a while I was looking at like prosthetic research with physiotherapy. So
did I tell you I did that?
Oh, you did? Okay, I didn't know.
It's your lucky day. Yeah, but yeah, go on first, and then I'll let you keep talking.
I'd say so. During my time at Liverpool, was part of the neuro rehab team as well, which focused on prosthesis. So your patients that have had a motor vehicle accident or some other neurological impairment, and they've got like above knee orthotics. So was working closely with the prosthesis, or the person that was working with the prosthesis, and they would be fitting it out, and then I'd be looking at their gait pattern, running it by them, and then they'd be fine tuning it on like, let's say, different, like they'd have it hooked up via Bluetooth looking at a laptop, which I found pretty cool, and they had like, let's say, the pressure sensors on the foot, and it was really, really like interesting to me at least, and like it was also quite empowering seeing like, let's say, a patient that literally hasn't walked since they've had the accident, and here they are walking again for the first time in like 8 months. Like, that's pretty special.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's cool. So so it sounds like you learned all that stump management stuff, which I think you learned mostly on the job, but yeah, on the clinical placement, or did you get a good sense of it during your course as well?
During the course, it wasn't as much. It was just like maybe some certain bandage techniques, and that's probably it.
Yeah.
But with the placement itself over at Liverpool, was seeing how that fits in with like adjusting it, making sure that it's at appropriate level to make sure it doesn't cause any other problems, like doesn't move up the change at the hips or the back, making sure that it's comfortable for them, those aspects as well.
Oh, you learn a lot there by the sounds of it. Yeah. So you're right. I mean, you're a living example of coursework wise. I mean, it covers a fair chunk, but obviously it can't cover everything. Otherwise, we wouldn't keep emphasizing there's something called lifelong learning and continual development. And yeah, you've got into places where you've kind of, did a bit more in this area, the amputee stuff. But of course, if you had a different RNG, so to speak, of different placements, you would have had a different subset of skills. And in other words, yeah, you got so many different things to still learn as well. Even I do have so many things to learn. So it looks like you've kind of narrowed down some places you want to go, like some fields or trajectories, but you haven't kind of settled firmly on one by the sounds of it.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Yep, and that's completely fine. And what that means is that it could be worth looking at jobs which give you a variety of experiences, like you said, that kind of touch on these kind of more interesting ones, if possible. So then you get to have a tease on which ones kind of do actually suit you. It might be interesting on paper, but maybe the system and the work is not your cup of tea. Yeah, which I think I gave you a bit of advice on. That's how I viewed allocation.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. So I think we're pretty good on the more formal part of this casual conversation. These were the kind of the random questions we written down and bounced off. If people are still viewing, and I know some of you are, and hopefully Almond Tofu, Holy Minty, Jaden the Creator, thanks for popping by. I try to not answer you straight away just for the sake of the VOD, but you've been noticed. And if you do have questions, I think Almond might have if you're still around, then please let us know. Particularly address questions to Seaton first if you have questions to Seaton, because he's still here on this call. And if we run out of questions for Seaton,